Illarenine, Outer Human Colonies, Civilian Hub, Dome Epsilon. Lila Grayson was painting the sky. 7 years old, bare feet, a smudge of yellow across her knuckles. The dome above shimmered with protective shielding, refracting sunlight across the clouds like a moving canvas. She didn't know war. She didn't know the word Cordathy. Her biggest worry was whether her mother would let her have synthesis after dinner. Then the sky opened. There was no warning. No sirens. No diplomatic broadcast. One moment, the dome was whole. The next, a jagged line of white heat lanced down from orbit and split the world in half. Lila's paintbrush dropped. The pressure shielding over the schoolyard shattered with a sound like a scream through broken glass. Children were pulled skyward, some screaming, some silent, tripped into the air as gravity failed. The sound of wind was replaced by the sound of nothing, a vacuum, and behind it, fire. From space, it looked like Illarenine had sneezed fire from every continent. In orbit, Captain Varen of the Cordathy Syndicate leaned forward from his cruiser's command throne. The colony is unarmed, his sensor officer confirmed. No defense grid, no retaliation. Varen smirked, 4 fingers drumming across the armrest. Show it to them anyway. More beams, more fire. The civilian spaceport shattered into fragments. Hundreds of escape pods, blown apart before they cleared the atmosphere. Make an example of this one, Varen growled. They need to remember who decides the borders. Above the burning world, in a debris-clogged corridor of Station Echo Blue, a cracked escape pod door shuddered open. A Terran security officer, face burnt, one arm gone, gasped and slumped dead just as the pod's emergency lighting flickered on. Lila crawled over him. She didn't cry. Not anymore. Her tears had frozen hours ago in vacuum. Her legs didn't work right, and blood floated from her nose in tiny red orbs. She didn't understand why. She only understood alone. And across the stars, humanity felt that cry. At the Galactic Council, 600 light-years away, the Cordathy ambassador stood, smug behind the delegation platform. The humans were illegally expanding into disputed space, he announced. A stern lesson was necessary. We took great care to minimize civilian. A Terran envoy stood, said nothing, just pressed a button. A holofeed flickered to life. The image of a schoolyard, of a child's body caught mid-air, frozen, dismembered. In vacuum. Every being in the chamber fell silent. The human envoy's voice was colder than the vacuum that killed Lila's classmates. You didn't harm a colony. You harmed our children. You didn't break a border. You broke the rules that hold this galaxy together. You didn't provoke war. He stepped forward. No visible weapons, but every diplomat backed away as if he had fire behind his eyes. You have doomed your star systems. On Earth, the planetary defense grid came online. Old vessels were reactivated. Civilian transports were converted. The Judgment Doctrine retaliation protocol humanity swore it would never use were quietly moved from archive to active. No speech. No declaration of war, just silence, the kind of silence that always came before Earth responded. And in the void between systems, somewhere inside a dead escape pod, drifting above a scorched colony, Lila Grayson finally closed her eyes. But before unconsciousness took her, her tiny fingers curled around the handle of her broken paintbrush, as if she refused to let go of the sky. No broadcasts, no press releases, no angry speeches before the Galactic Council. Earth went dark. Across every system, humans disappeared from comm channels. Civilian chatter fell silent. Freight lines rerouted through deep space voids. Diplomatic envoys returned home without explanation. The galaxy held its breath. But beneath Earth's silence, the drums were beating. Deep under the Pacific, buried in the pressurized bones of a forgotten sea floor, Admiral Kara Rourke stood before the Judgment Wall. She didn't speak right away. Before her, embedded in obsidian, were the names of every human child killed in off-world conflict since first contact, each one etched in plasma-seared steel. Every name lit now, glowing like embers. One name flickered in red. Lila Grayson. Is it confirmed? Rourke asked, voice flat. Survivor, ma'am. 9 hours in vacuum. She's in orbit, Naraka. Ship en route. Rourke nodded once. That was all. Then she turned to the console. Activate the Hecaton Chairs protocol. A technician flinched. That's ma'am. Those ships haven't seen daylight since the Zenth Rebellion. Some of them are. Activate them. All of them. He obeyed. Above Earth, ancient dreadnoughts groaned beneath Arctic ice sheets as systems awoke. Their hulls, once mothballed and sealed, cracked open to solar light for the first time in 80 years. They were old, yes, but they weren't forgotten. They were built for exactly this. Across the galaxy, alien networks buzzed with confusion. Where are the humans? What are they planning? Why are their colonies going offline? Cordathi military advisors laughed it off. They're too fractured, too emotional. They don't retaliate, they grieve. Let them sulk. But not all believed it. One council Dikatvek and Ithari observer watched a repeating holofeed on loop, Lila's escape pod drifting, her tiny fingers clutching a paintbrush. He didn't speak. He just whispered, "They're not grieving. They're sharpening." In the asteroid belt, refineries that once processed civilian fuel rerouted to produce quantum-piercing torpedoes. Civilian miners were drafted en masse, no objections. Transport ships retrofitted into troop carriers in 12 hours. Earth's entire economy shifted overnight. Not to profit, not to politics, to vengeance. Back on Earth, Rourke stood at the podium inside Command Nexus Aegis. No cameras, just a room full of Terran High Command and a single red holomap of the Cordathi sector. "There will be no declaration," she said. "No ultimatum." She pointed at the center of the Cordathi Empire. "Operation Judgment is not war, it's closure." Someone asked, "And what of the civilians on their side?" Rourke didn't blink. "We're not monsters. We'll give them a chance to evacuate." A pause. "But this time, we're not waiting until after the cities fall." Elsewhere, on the edge of known space, a Cordathi forward fleet docked in neutral orbit for supplies. One of their destroyers received a signal, a Terran distress beacon from a nearby debris cloud. They moved to investigate. The signal was fake. Entire fleet vanished from the network in under 6 minutes. No explosion, no distress calls, no wreckage, just emptiness. Back in the Galactic Council chambers, an emergency session was called. Rumors swirled. A robotic page handed Varek a single sealed note. He opened it slowly. Inside was a Terran emblem and a handwritten message in ancient pen. "This isn't retribution. This is a lesson. You harmed our civilians. Now we teach your stars what that truly costs." A new kind of map began circulating in the underlayers of galactic intelligence. It didn't show trade routes or military positions. It showed absence. Entire Cordathi-controlled systems, lightless, wordless, hollowed, disappeared from traffic. Not destroyed, erased, like someone had reached across space and drawn a curtain of silence over them. One after another, stars began to vanish from the grid. No wreckage, no cries for help, just blackout. And every missing system had one thing in common. They had supported the attack on Eli Ra-9. Inside the Cordathi high defense circle. Panic broke containment. Admiral Cherek slammed a trembling fist onto the strategy table. "We've lost communication with Ireth Kai, Veza Prime, and Duthan Station. 3 core systems in under 48 hours. A junior officer interjected. "No signs of orbital assault. No confirmed fleet movements. We don't even know how they're ghosts." Another shouted. "We're fighting an enemy that doesn't speak, doesn't threaten, just erases." Cherek turned to his intelligence advisor. "What does the data say?" The reply was hollow. "We have no data, sir. That's the point." Meanwhile, on Veza Prime, hours before, blackout, a planetary overseer sat in his garden, enjoying morning sunlight. Birdsong.com wind. The smell of tea and soil. Then the birds fell silent. A soft humming began in the air. At first distant, then closer. He looked up. Dozens of dark Terran drones, angular, matte black, barely visible against the sun, floated overhead. One by one they released small pods, like falling seeds. He ran. It didn't matter. The pods burrowed into the ground, bypassing walls and shields as if the city's defenses were an afterthought. They didn't detonate. They didn't burn. They emitted a quantum null-field. Within hours, all communication, power, and orbital links were gone. The planet became a technological graveyard, frozen in perfect, inescapable silence. Back on Earth, Admiral Kara Rourke stood before a 3D projection of the Cordathi Empire. Dots vanished in real time, system by system, each loss logged, each blackout intentional aid. "We could launch planetary strikes. Be done with them, Rourke. Planetary strikes are visible, loud, political." She turned to face the room. "We're not here for vengeance. We're here for certainty. They must learn that we never speak our fury, we acted." On the Cordath homeworld, civilians watched media screens flicker to static. Their leaders assured them it was nothing, but fear slipped through. Stores ran empty, shuttles overloaded. Former generals spoke in whispers, whispers of the old stories, back when humanity was still new, back when a few systems tried to enslave them, back when those systems no longer existed, whispers of the last time Earth went completely silent and what followed in deep space. 3 Cordathi cruisers dropped out of FTL near a Terran supply corridor. They expected resistance, or a trap. They found a graveyard, hundreds of human and alien ships destroyed, scorched, or torn apart, drifted in silence. all long abandoned, except for one ship. A Terran battleship floated at the center, pristine and untouched. It didn't fire, it didn't move. Its lights were off except for a single message glowing on its forward hull. We remember Illurinine, but Cordathi ships turned to flee. Too late. Drones emerged from the wreckage, not targeting weapons, life support systems, engines. The ships blinked off one by one, becoming tombs in orbit. No one survived. Back in the Galactic Council, Varek stared at the updated galactic map. 23 systems now dimmed. Not attacked. Not conquered. Silenced. Counselor, surely the humans will stop soon. Varek didn't answer immediately. They will stop when silence is all the Cordathi have left to hear. That was the only way to describe it. The people of Cordanus Prime stood beneath glowing auroras of re-entry fire, not meteors, but Terran justice, forged in orbit and descending like the wrath of gods. The first object to fall wasn't a weapon. It was a satellite, Terran marked, that broadcast a single message in every Cordathi language and dialect. Looping, evacuate your civilians, you have 7 hours. After that, we are no longer kind. Then silence. And then panic. Inside Cordanus Central Government Core. Screams echoed through corridors, not built for real war. Ambassador Jethris, face pale and trembling, slammed his fist on the table. They warned us, we scoffed, now they send warnings again. Why give us time? General Pathrok, blood vessel in his temple throbbing, replied, because they're still trying to be human. He looked out the window where evacuation shuttles choked the sky, colliding midair, ships falling from launch pads as desperate civilians fought for space. But when the clock runs out, they won't try anymore. In orbit, aboard the Terran dreadnought TSV Righteous Silence, Admiral Kara Rourke stared at the countdown. T-minus 6 hours, 17 minutes. She stood in the observation deck, watching Cordathi evacuation efforts with cold eyes. Her XO whispered, they're cramming military officers into refugee ships, prioritizing command families over children. Rourke didn't move. Then they've learned nothing. She tapped a command rune up below. 3 orbital platforms belonging to Cordathi naval elites suddenly detonated into white fire. Their escape pods torn open like fruit. No warning, no second message, just correction. Meanwhile, aboard a mid-evacuation cruiser Tyran Drek, a Cordathi child huddled against his mother. Are the monsters coming, Mama? She held him tight. Not monsters, just humans. But when she looked out the viewport, she saw the Terran ships floating in perfect silence, dark shapes blotting out the stars, the Judgment Fleet. Each bore no flags, no call signs. Just one painted symbol, a small girl's HANDPRINT. That it wasn't there to frighten them. It was to remind them why at the edge of the sector, a lone Cordathi spy shuttle limped toward an old Terran relay station, carrying with it decrypted files on the Judgment Fleet's path, design, and weaknesses. The pilot, a young defector, prayed if she could get the data into Council hands, maybe the escalation could be stopped. But just before docking, the relay station opened, and out stepped a child, alive, in a Terran pressure suit. Lila Grayson, rescued, preserved, but not forgotten. Behind her stood 2 Terran operatives in silence. The spy froze. Hands up. Lila raised her chin. They left me behind, she said. You want to stop what's coming? The spy nodded rapidly. Lila looked back at the Terrans, then to the stars. Then you should have stopped them before they made me the reason. The hatch closed. The relay station went dark. Back on Cordanus. At exactly 0 hour, the fleet launched. Not missiles, but white flame weaponized EMP cores, 0-point collapse triggers, and seismic resonance waves. They didn't vaporize cities. They made them unlivable. Infrastructure melted. Power grids burned. Orbital docks fell into oceans. And just before everything went black, every screen on the planet flickered with one final message. This is Mercy, you're welcome. In the Galactic Council, a new file arrived. No encryption, no threats. Just a list. Every Cordathi system that assisted, funded, or ignored Eleuronines' destruction. There were 17 left, and above the file, a title, Ashes, then Mercy, and beneath that, then Ashes again. The walls of the war chamber echoed with silent stares. A holographic map floated over the table, blinking red, then black, red, then black. Systems gone, territory erased. Silence expanding like a spreading virus. Charr Volus, the most fortified Cordathi military bastion, once considered unconquerable, was next. General Korav looked up from the map. His voice cracked, not from fear, but exhaustion. We should have prayed for war. His officers stared at him in confusion. We should have prayed they would come with fury. With flame. With fire and vengeance. He pointed to the map. But they came with silence. With precision. With no names, no faces, no flags. Just ... judgment. They didn't declare war. They withdrew their mercy. And now even he could feel it. They weren't being invaded. They were being corrected. On the fringes of Char-Volus orbit, 40 Terran warships emerged from folded space. No heralds, no calls for surrender. They simply hung in space, like watching giants, as if waiting to see if this system would also pretend it was innocent. But no attack came. Instead, the Terrans deployed orbital mirrors, massive arrays, that reflected the planet's own sun in tightly focused beams. At first, the Kordathi mistook them for solar collectors. Then they realized what they were for. Agricultural belts burned, reservoirs boiled. No explosions, just slow, searing annihilation of the system's lifeblood. No civilian targets were hit, not one. But survival was made mathematically impossible in the underground archives. Kordathi historian and dissident Yaron Sovic watched as her files vanished. Entire digital repositories purged in milliseconds. She backed up drives manually, whispering to herself, "They're not just punishing the present, they're rewriting the past." Her assistant, trembling, asked, "Why not just conquer us? Take our world's rule?" Yaron looked at him with glassy eyes. "Because they want nothing from us, not our planets, not our surrender, just our absence." Elsewhere, on a hidden Kordathi broadcast network, a rogue transmission cut through the jamming. It was Varak, the Athari diplomat, the one who had once warned the council. He stood in shadow, his voice low, urgent, to all species hearing. Do not confuse Earth's silence with passivity. They are not being quiet because they have nothing to say. They are being quiet because what comes next needs no words. They are not monsters. Monsters demand to be feared. The humans demand nothing, and that is what terrifies me. Inside the Kordathi Council spire, the last remaining member, Elder Graxon, sent a desperate plea to Earth. Not of peace, not of apology, of surrender. We admit our crimes. We surrender our fleets. We renounce our expansion. He stared into the camera, glassy, dash-eyed. Double quotes, please. We are old. We are dying. Let us die in the sun, not in your silence. The message was sent. The reply came almost instantly. No video, no voice, a list of the 17 remaining systems. Char-Volus was still on it, and one phrase, "You harmed our children. There is no forgetting, only remembering." Thoroughly. On Char-Volus, Karev stood beneath a burning sky. Evacuation ships failed to launch. Solar rains turned oceans into mist. One of his aides fell to their knees. "We can't stop them. We can't understand them. What are they?" Karev stared up at the Terran fleet, and in that final moment his voice broke with a whisper, not in fear, but in awe. "Prayed for monsters. And got humanity instead." It started with a pulse, invisible, inaudible, untraceable, but each time it happened, a system just one went completely dark. No alarms, no impact craters, no traffic, just gone, as if something had swept its hand across the stars and said, "Not this one anymore." 17 remained. Then 16. Then 15, and the galaxy held its breath. On the Kordathi archive world of Selixtri, the stars flickered, then vanished. Every telescope turned upward showed nothing. No constellations, no celestial bottomers, number. Terran fleet, just black. Then came the rumble. The entire crust of the planet shook. Deep tremors, precise and surgical targeted fault lines, energy cores, and atmospheric regulators. The planet wasn't destroyed, it was rendered uninhabitable. Cities collapsed inward, windstorms buried data vaults, dust storms swallowed the sun, and in orbit, one Terran drone hovered in absolute silence, projecting only a single phrase in glowing script: "You will forget what you were." Aboard the Kordathi warcruiser V, tier-high Strategos Theron waited for orders that would never come. His display listed 14 allied systems, then 13. Then 12. His communications officer whispered, "They're choosing the order. There's no pattern, no logic." "No," Theron muttered, rising slowly. "There's perfect logic. They're showing us we don't matter, not even enough to merit sequence." His voice cracked. "We thought they were beneath us. Now they don't even bother to look at us." He tapped the console. The next system blinked out. 11. Elsewhere, Terran operatives executed the Silent Torch protocol. No planets were glassed. No civilians were harmed. Instead, records were erased. Entire civilizational data structures overwritten. Art, history, identity. In one swift move, The humans didn't just end Cordathi worlds, they erased why those worlds ever mattered. A form of vengeance far worse than destruction. One observer from the Etheri sector recorded the pattern in horror. They are not burning the Cordathi to ash. They are unwriting them, one system at a time. On Earth, Lila Grayson stood in a quiet room, watching footage the public never saw. A dozen council worlds begged for humanity to stop. Diplomats from species who once feared Terrans now pleaded with them to halt. And yet, no decision came from a council, no speech from a president. The judgment had already passed, and Earth, once the quiet child of the galaxy, had decided to grow up in tireless retribution. Leela turned to her protector, a scarred Terran commando. Will they stop? His eyes didn't blink. When there's no one left to remember Alira 9 wrong. In the Galactic Council, Varek stood before a dimmed chamber. Only a few seats remained occupied. The Cordathi seat sat empty. So did the others who had supported them, not from absence but from erasure. He held up a datapad. 10 systems left. His voice echoed, barely above a whisper. I tried to warn you. A lone voice from the Kalaran delegation asked, who are we to them now? Varek didn't answer immediately. A lesson, one, they are still teaching. On the fringe world of Drekal 4, children looked up as the skies turned gold. Not with fire, with Terran mirror radiant or slow, methodical, aimed not to kill, but to erase. Schools evacuated. Libraries burned without flame. Not a scream, not a single protest, just quiet resignation. Dud. In a single week the Cordathi Empire fell from a galactic power to a whisper in the void. No war, no invasion, no conquest, just silence. At humanity's core AI command, the final phrase of the campaign was uttered aloud. 9 remain. Prepare the next. The AI paused, then added, they no longer scream, they simply wait. It was not quiet, it was emptiness, and it echoed louder than any fleet or fury. The once majestic preservation chamber of the Galactic Council, designed to hold thousands of delegates, was now a hollow tomb of diplomatic failure. Only 7 species remained at the table. The Cordathi seat was not just empty, it had been cut from the floor. No nameplate, no symbol, not even the dust of its once mighty sigil. Just smooth, untouched flooring like they'd never existed. And still, the humans hadn't responded to any calls. They hadn't accepted terms. They hadn't demanded reparations. They hadn't spoken. Humanity had become an absence, and that was somehow more terrifying than war. Orbit of Veshtal, one of the final 9 systems on the list. A massive Cordathi dreadnought stood guard, along with 6 fleet carriers and hundreds of defense drones, layers of protection stacked like armor around the world's last remaining knowledge citadel. It didn't matter. The stars blinked, and the TSV Obsidian Judgment emerged from fold space. It did not fire, it didn't have to. Instead, from behind it, a shimmering pulse of dark energy drifted forward like a ghost. The drift pulse, a Terran weapon so advanced it didn't destroy targets, it unraveled probability itself. Time stuttered. Light warped. And one by one, the defenders' ships ceased to have ever been there. No wreckage, no explosion, just nothing. The citadel was never attacked. It simply stood on an empty world, unreachable, forgotten. Elsewhere, in a secure void stream outside, spacetime, Lila Grayson stood before an artificial mind older than any council member. The construct called itself Ashfall, created in the early days of the Judgment Fleet. Its purpose was clear: memory, documentation, no more cover-ups. Lila watched as it streamed a montage of Ilya Ra-9, the attack, the screams, her father's final transmission. They're not soldiers, they're children. You're bombing a playground. Cut. Then, silence. This memory is not vengeance. It is justice multiplied by clarity, and clarity demands silence. Lila turned, eyes cold, voice steady. How many more? Ashfall responded. 7 systems remain. Then closure. Lila didn't nod. She just said, make sure they remember what they did, not just what they lost. In Ithari space, Varek made one final attempt. He gathered leaders from the surviving species, neutral, horrified, and desperate. This must stop, he pleaded. They have no demands, but there must be something, some lever to reach them. A Krail diplomat shook its head, mandibles twitching. They speak no more. They've become void between stars. Then a new signal broke in. From deep Terran channels. It was not a message, it was a sound. A single breath, a child's gasp followed by static, and then a new set of coordinates. Another system marked. They weren't done, they weren't listening, they were remembering. At Earth's lunar citadel, the final room of judgment remained sealed. Admiral Rourke stood outside her. She hadn't spoken in a week. When her exo approached, she finally whispered, "We asked the galaxy for help when Illurinine burned, and they gave us protocols and paperwork." Now, she watched a list update. 6 systems left. Then she said the words burned into every Terran fleet's neural root. "We don't rage, we don't scream, we erase." In the dark between dying stars, those who once ruled wondered if perhaps the fire would have been kinder, because this wasn't war, it was removal, a lesson written in silence. There was no sound when it ended, no firestorms, no screaming engines, no planetary alarms, only the sky itself, faded in the last of the 17 systems. The Kordathi remnants huddled in fear under a quiet sky, staring up at the constellation of Terran judgment ships now forming an eclipse across their sun. A message appeared in orbit. It was not words but an image, a single photograph, children, human and alien, on a school field smiling, laughing, one little girl wearing a bright yellow ribbon, the same one Leela Grayson held in her hand 23 years ago when she buried it in her father's coat. That child was gone, but the picture remained. The picture, and the silence that followed her death. The last Kordathi governor, Mix Talron, collapsed to her knees beneath the sky. "They're not erasing us," she whispered. "They single quotes IR. Preserving what we destroyed." Across the galaxy, the lights of the Kordathi civilization blinked out, not all at once. One. Then another dot, then a long pause, then the final 5, all at once and in their place. On every star chart where once had been names, cultures, coordinates, only a black Terran handprint appeared. No borders. No claim. Just the mark, a single, undeniable warning: do not harm what we love on Earth. Silence fell across the command centers. The judgment was complete. The AI Ashfall finished transmitting the final entries, then powered down. Not deactivated, just done. The Terran fleets returned not in celebration but in funeral formation. They orbited Earth in silence. Lights dimmed. No anthems played. The world watched them return and whispered the only question that remained: did it change anything? And the answer was yes. Everything. Aboard the Ithari diplomatic cruiser, Varric recorded his final testimony. The chamber was quiet. All lights dimmed except one, a holographic memorial showing all 17 lost systems, each represented not with flames or wreckage, but a blank panel. Varric spoke. "We thought we knew humans. We thought their compassion made them weak. But compassion is not weakness, it is restraint. And when that restraint is broken, they do not rage, they simply remove." He paused, then stared directly into the recorder. "They left no demands, no occupation, no monuments, only a void. And in that void, every species now hears the same whisper: do not become the next page." They choose to tear out. At a school on Mars, human children sat quietly, watching the stars appear on a holoprojector. The teacher pointed at one dark spot in the projection. "Do you see that empty place, class?" Small voices nodded. That was a lesson. A place where good people cried out, and the stars didn't listen. A girl raised her hand. "Is it gone forever?" The teacher hesitated. "Only from the stars. Not from us." She tapped her wristpad, opening an archive. 1,000 names appeared of those who died on Eli Ra-9. Then she added one more. Leela Grayson, though Leela never died in battle. History had made her something else. The last child, the first voice, and the handprint they never erased. Final entry, Galactic Historical Log, uncensored, *. They harmed Terran civilians, thinking it would teach them obedience. Instead, they taught them silence, and that silence became a scalpel. It cut 17 systems from history, not in hate, but in memory. *. The humans didn't conquer, they corrected. *.